Some stories were meant to fade, tales of golden cities, vanished empires, and impossible feats carved into legend. For centuries they lived in the margins of folklore, dismissed by scholars and skeptics alike. After all, myths were supposed to be metaphors, not maps. But what if the line between myth and memory isn't as clear as we once believed? Archaeologists digging through dust, scientists peering down from satellites, and explorers venturing into forgotten lands have all uncovered evidence that some of our oldest stories were rooted in reality. Beneath layers of time, ruins rise. Names once spoken only in epics reappear on clay tablets. Structures once thought fantastical are now studied stone by stone. Not every legend crumbles under scrutiny. Some leave behind trails of stone, fragments of ritual, and whispered clues that say, "I was here." This is the story of 7 such places, where myth stood its ground and history finally caught up. For centuries, the Hittites were little more than ghostly echoes in ancient texts. They appeared briefly in the Hebrew Bible as a people who interacted with Abraham. Egyptian inscriptions mentioned them as rivals at war and as uneasy allies in peace. But for the modern world, they were a puzzle with missing pieces. No ruins, no cities, no language, just scattered references that scholars once dismissed as either poetic invention or mistaken identity. Could an entire empire, strong enough to challenge pharaohs, really have disappeared without a trace? That question lingered until the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when scattered inscriptions in an unknown script began to surface in the highlands of Anatolia. In 1834, French explorer Charles Texier stumbled upon vast ruins near Bogazkal, Turkey. Locals knew the site as Büyükil, but few realized its significance. It wasn't until 1906, under German archaeologist Hugo Winkler, that the ruins were identified as Hattusa, capital of a forgotten superpower, the Hittite Empire. What Winkler found there would reshape our understanding of the late Bronze Age. Beneath the earth lay immense stone walls, fortresses, ceremonial gates guarded by lion carvings, and the remains of a meticulously planned city. But the true treasure was buried inside its palace. Over 10,000 cuneiform tablets, neatly stacked in what had once been the royal archive. Written in a newly identified language, an early branch of Indo-European, the tablets recorded royal correspondence, laws, diplomatic treaties, and even oaths to the gods. Among them was a diplomatic gem, the Treaty of Kadesh, signed between Rameses II of Egypt and the Hittite king Hattusili III, around 1259 BCE. It is the oldest known surviving peace treaty, and it reveals a truth long obscured by silence, that the Hittites were not a peripheral tribe, but one of the great powers of the ancient world. At their height, around the 14th to 13th centuries BCE, the Hittite Empire stretched across most of Anatolia and into northern Syria, commanding trade routes, waging wars with Egypt, and influencing neighboring cultures. They built roads, developed legal systems, and orchestrated complex international alliances. And then, around 1180 BCE, they were gone. No grand battle marks their end. No fiery catastrophe recorded their fall. Only the silence of empty halls and buried texts. What happened? Was it famine, rebellion, internal collapse, or the arrival of the mysterious sea peoples who upended the entire eastern Mediterranean? Or perhaps it was all of these at once, crashing down like a domino chain too vast to stop. Even now, questions remain. How could such a powerful empire vanish so completely that its existence was doubted for centuries? How many of its cities still lie hidden beneath the soil of modern Turkey and Syria? What knowledge might yet rest in the unread tablets still housed in museum archives? For all we've unearthed, fortifications, treaties, kings and gods, the Hittites remain partly obscured by the very earth that preserved them. Their story is no longer a myth, but it is far from complete. And far to the south, in a landscape of endless dunes, another vanished city would test the limits of what science, legend and satellite eyes could reveal. In the harsh emptiness of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, Bedouin tribes spoke of a city that once glittered in the desert sun. Known as Ubar, or Iram of the Pillars, it was said to be a hub of wealth and power, a center of the frankincense trade, and a place so decadent that it drew the wrath of the heavens. According to Quranic legend and pre-Islamic law, Ubar defied divine warnings and was punished for its arrogance, swallowed by the sands in a single cataclysmic moment. For generations, poets sang of it, explorers sought it, and skeptics dismissed it as allegory. A moral tale, not a place. But could a city so thoroughly erased still leave behind a trace? For centuries, Ubar was a ghost chased across maps by dreamers and archaeologists alike. Some believed it was a distorted memory of other ancient cities. Others considered it Arabia's answer to Atlantis, a myth wrapped in spiritual metaphor. It wasn't until the late 20th century that serious efforts to locate it would gain traction through an unlikely source: NASA. In 1984, a joint project between NASA and researchers from Harvard and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory used satellite imagery to scan the vast deserts of Oman. What they found was startling: faint ancient caravan routes etched into the sands, converging on a single location in Dhofar province. Intrigued, an expedition led by Nicholas Clapp, filmmaker and amateur archaeologist, and archaeologist Juris Zarins, set out to investigate. By 1992, the team reached the site of Shizr, where they uncovered the remains of a fortified settlement built atop a massive underground limestone cavern that had collapsed long ago. What they found were the ruins of towers, pottery, and artifacts dating back at least 2,000 years, all pointing to a key outpost in the frankincense trade network. This collapse could explain the sudden disappearance described in legend, where the city was said to have sunk into the earth as punishment. Was this truly Ubar? Some scholars believe the site at Shizr may have been a regional trading center, a kind of gateway to the broader, now-vanished city. Others think it could be the very place that inspired the myth. While not a golden metropolis, the settlement bore striking resemblance to descriptions of Iram, and its strategic position linked it directly to ancient incense routes that had once enriched the region beyond imagination. The legend spoke of pillars, towering markers of pride and excess, and here they stood, weathered and broken, still rising from the sand. The city, if not Ubar in full, was real enough to validate centuries of storytelling passed from campfire to scripture. But if ancient towers could lie hidden beneath dunes for millennia, what else might remain undiscovered in remote corners of the earth? Perhaps if we travel further north toward the cradle of civilization, we might find a different kind of legend, not of lost gold or vanished cities, but of a king whose story outlived even the ruins of his empire. Long before Homer sang of Greek heroes, before the Bible chronicled ancient kingdoms, there lived a man named Gilgamesh, or so the old tales said, a mighty king of Uruk, 2/3 divine, 1/3 human, who battled monsters, defied gods, and searched for immortality. His story was preserved only in scattered fragments, whispered down through generations. Many believed him to be nothing more than Mesopotamian folklore, a myth carved in metaphor, not stone. And yet in the heart of modern-day Iraq, the dust of forgotten empires held a different truth. In the mid-19th century, British archaeologist Austin Henry Layard began excavating the mounds of Kuyunjik, unaware he was about to uncover Nineveh, the lost capital of the Assyrian Empire. Once a thriving metropolis and the crown jewel of Assyria under King Ashurbanipal, Nineveh had been wiped from memory after its destruction in 612 BCE. Its name lived on in ancient scripture, but its reality had slipped beneath the surface of time. What Layard unearthed changed the course of history. Amid the palace ruins, archaeologists discovered a remarkable archive, the Library of Ashurbanipal, a vast collection of over 30,000 clay tablets, meticulously arranged and inscribed in cuneiform. These weren't mere accounts of trade or taxes. They were literature, legal codes, omens, rituals, and epic poems, and among them, pressed into hardened clay, was the complete epic of Gilgamesh. Dated to around 2100 BCE, this tale predated Homer by over 1,000 years. In it, Gilgamesh journeys with his companion Enkidu, faces divine wrath, mourns death, and ultimately confronts the limits of human mortality. What had been assumed to be allegory was, in fact, a carefully preserved piece of ancient Mesopotamian culture, retold, refined, and revered for centuries. The discovery not only gave us the oldest known literary masterpiece, it reshaped our understanding of early civilization. Here was a society so advanced that it archived its myths, beliefs, and history in systematic collections, anticipating modern libraries by millennia. Yet questions still linger. Was Gilgamesh truly a king, or a symbolic composite? Archaeological records list a King Gilgamesh of Uruk in the Sumerian king list, but his life remains shrouded in the fog between history and storytelling. And what other voices lie unread among the broken tablets stored in museum basements, still untranslated, still waiting? From Nineveh's ashes rose not only a lost city, but a lost worldview. one that dared to immortalize a mortal man and in doing so outlived empires. But if a man's story could survive 4,000 years in clay, what traces might still remain of a stone path, said to have been built by gods and beasts, stretching across the sea? Some legends aren't buried beneath soil, they're hidden in plain sight across the surface of the sea. In the Indian epic Ramayana, the Prince Rama embarks on a divine mission to rescue his wife Sita from the demon king Ravana in the island kingdom of Lanka. To reach her, Rama's army of Vanaras, mythical monkey warriors, constructs a massive bridge across the ocean, stone by stone, guided by divine will. That bridge, known as Ram Setu or Adam's Bridge, has lived for thousands of years in religious texts, folklore, and temple rituals. But to science, it was simply a legend, until the skies themselves told a different story. In 2002, satellite images from NASA astonished scholars and skeptics alike. A chain of limestone shoals stretching nearly 48 kilometers linked Pamban Island in India to Mannar Island in Sri Lanka. Submerged in some parts, visible in others, the formation appeared oddly linear, as though following a path set by ancient hands. Though geologists argue it is a natural formation, the alignment is so precise that it reignited debates. Could this be the echo of something man-altered? Ancient causeways built atop sandbanks, now eroded by centuries of tide. Historical records add more fuel. 9th century Islamic texts refer to this as a traversable land bridge. Early British maps label it Adam's Bridge, linked to the Islamic belief that Adam crossed it after being cast out of paradise. In Hindu traditions, it is sacred proof of a divine past. Could multiple cultures have preserved the same memory in different forms? The composition of the bridge is also curious. Geological surveys show that the shoals sit atop a sand base, but some of the rocks appear to have been transported, not formed in situ. A study by the Geological Survey of India in the early 2000s suggested that parts of the formation might be man-made, or at least human-altered, dated to around 7,000 years ago, a time well before advanced maritime construction should have been possible. Yet there's no consensus. The debate remains as much spiritual as it is scientific. To millions of believers, Ram Setu is sacred geography, a testament to ancient gods and the resilience of faith. To skeptics, it's an unusual yet explainable product of tides and tectonics. But neither side can deny this. A story once considered pure mythology is now anchored to a physical place, charted on maps and studied by scientists. It may never be proven whether humans or gods shaped the shoals, but the legend that once floated above the sea now runs straight through it. And while this bridge links continents, the next story links men not across oceans but through something even more intoxicating, the promise of gold. It began with a shimmer, an echo of gold that traveled across oceans and twisted into obsession. The Spanish conquistadors called it El Dorado, the Gilded One, a city or kingdom, hidden somewhere in the New World, where the walls gleamed, the rivers glittered, and the very soil promised fortune. Driven by hunger for riches and eternal glory, explorers plunged into unmapped jungles, scaled Andean peaks, and died in swamps and ravines, chasing a city that shimmered just out of reach. But the myth of El Dorado didn't begin as a place. It began as a ritual. Among the Muisca people of what is now Colombia, there was a tradition unlike any other. When a new ruler rose to power, he would coat himself in fine gold dust, transforming into a living statue of sunlight. Accompanied by priests and nobles, he would sail to the center of Lake Guatavita, and there, beneath the gaze of his people, he would offer jewels, gold, and sacred objects into the depths as a tribute to the gods. The Muisca did not see gold as currency. It was a symbol of cosmic power, a sacred medium between mortals and the divine. Spanish chroniclers, hearing fragments of this ritual from indigenous informants, misunderstood or perhaps reimagined the story. The man became a city, the city became a kingdom, and soon El Dorado was no longer a ceremony but a place of impossible riches waiting to be taken. Expeditions followed. In 1531, Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada pushed deep into the Andes in search of it, founding Bogotá along the way. In 1541, Francisco de Orellana sailed the Amazon in pursuit of golden kingdoms, giving the river its name after a clash with fierce female warriors, reminiscent of Greek Amazons. Even Sir Walter Raleigh, a century later, ventured into Guyana, convinced that the city lay just beyond the next bend in the river. None found it. Many never returned. But the truth, as it turns out, was never hidden. it was simply misunderstood. In the early 20th century, attempts to drain Lake Guatavita revealed golden artifacts at its bottom. Nose rings, figurines, ornaments, all confirming the sacred offerings once made by the Muisca. One of the most iconic artifacts, the Muisca raft, discovered in a nearby cave, depicts the exact ritual in dazzling gold. A chieftain, enshrined in regalia, flanked by priests, aboard a raft bound for the lake's center. No golden city was ever built, but the gold was real, the ritual was real, and the memory endured, reshaped by imperial greed into something both grander and more tragic. El Dorado was never a place. It was a moment repeated across generations, where a man became divine and gold returned to the earth. And as the Spanish scoured jungles in vain, they passed by mountains that held secrets of their own, where a white stone city waited, forgotten beneath a sea of green. They called it La Ciudad Blanca, the White City. In the remote jungles of Mosquitia, eastern Honduras, whispers of a lost civilization passed from one generation to the next. Local tribes told of an ancient metropolis, its buildings gleaming white under the sun, filled with treasure and cursed by the gods. Some called it the city of the monkey god, where a half-man, half-monkey deity once ruled. Others claimed it had been abandoned in fear, its people struck down by divine wrath for their excess. To Western ears, it sounded like yet another jungle myth, romantic, vivid, and almost certainly false. But the story refused to die. In the 1920s and 1930s, explorers like Theodore Maud claimed to have reached it. Maud returned from the jungle with tales of lost temples and idols, promising to reveal the location, only to die under mysterious circumstances before ever publishing his maps. His silence fed the legend, turning La Ciudad Blanca into a kind of Central American Atlantis. For decades, the jungle held its secrets. Traditional archaeological surveys were impossible in the mountainous, snake-infested terrain where thick vegetation obscured everything. Then, in 2012, a team led by filmmakers, archaeologists, and scientists employed a new kind of vision: LiDAR, light detection and ranging, a remote sensing technology that uses lasers to scan terrain through forest cover. From a small aircraft flying over the dense canopy, LiDAR returned images that defied belief. Beneath the trees were geometric shapes: plazas, pyramids, canals, mounds, and residential complexes spread across the valley floor. The jungle had buried not just a city, but an entire urban network. In 2015, ground expeditions confirmed the LiDAR data. Archaeologists found stone ceremonial seats, elaborate sculptures, and artifacts left untouched for centuries. The site had likely been abandoned over 500 years ago, possibly due to disease, environmental collapse, or social upheaval. Curiously, this civilization was not Mayan. It represented a previously unknown culture, distinct from better-known Mesoamerican civilizations. Their architecture, urban planning, and iconography hinted at complex spiritual beliefs and a sophisticated society that had thrived in isolation. The jungle had reclaimed it all, as if protecting a secret too sacred or too cursed to be known. Despite the excitement, the area remains closed to large-scale excavation. Concerns about disturbing burial sites, the fragile ecological balance, and the danger of looting have kept most of the city buried, its full story still hidden beneath root and vine. But even what has been revealed is enough to confirm this. La Ciudad Blanca was real, a place of myth now traced by satellite, confirmed by foot, and carefully guarded by the jungle once again. And far beyond the jungle, where trees give way to sand, another vanished city lay beneath a shifting desert, its towers long forgotten beneath the dunes. In the ancient world, few marvels stirred the imagination like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Described as an oasis suspended in the sky, the gardens were said to defy gravity and climate alike. Terraced layers of exotic trees, flowering vines, and rushing water rising like a green mountain in the desert. Greek historians such as Strabo, Philo of Byzantium, and Diodorus Siculus praised the gardens as one of the 7 wonders of the world, a man-made Eden said to soothe the homesickness of a queen. But despite their fame, one glaring mystery persisted for centuries. No trace of the gardens has ever been found in Babylon. Excavations in the ancient city, located near modern Hilar, Iraq, uncovered temples, ziggurats, walls, and palaces built under Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century BCE, the king most often credited with creating the gardens. But not a single artifact, inscription, or ruin confirmed their existence. How could one of the greatest wonders of antiquity leave no archaeological footprint? Some dismissed the gardens as poetic fantasy. Others proposed that they had been destroyed without a trace. But a bolder theory took shape in the late 20th century. What if the historians simply got the city wrong? While studying Assyrian cuneiform inscriptions, researcher Dr. Stephanie Daly of Oxford University noticed that another ancient king, Sennacherib of Assyria, described in vivid detail the construction of a grand palace complex in Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, over a century before Nebuchadnezzar's reign. In his writings, Sennacherib claimed to have created a wonder for all people, complete with lush gardens, exotic plants, and revolutionary waterworks. Unlike Babylon, Nineveh, located near modern-day Mosul, yielded archaeological proof. Excavations revealed the remains of vast aqueducts, canals, and water screws, possibly early versions of the Archimedean screw, designed to elevate water from the Tigris River to irrigate higher ground. The engineering described in Sennacherib's own inscriptions matched the feats attributed to the Hanging Gardens with uncanny precision. The misattribution may have been a result of ancient confusion. Greek historians, writing centuries after both cities had fallen, may have conflated tales of Babylon's grandeur with the marvels of Nineveh. Babylon was the more famous city, and its reputation may have absorbed the legend whole. If Dr. Daly's theory is correct, the Hanging Gardens did exist, not as fantasy, but as an engineering masterpiece in the wrong city. Built in the 7th century BCE, they would have represented not only an aesthetic triumph, but a technological one. Bringing flowing water uphill through bronze channels and carved canals in an arid region required knowledge far ahead of its time. This theory has gained support, but debate continues. Some scholars still insist the gardens were in Babylon, now lost beneath riverbeds or modern development. Others argue the myth was always metaphorical, but the idea that such a wonder could be misplaced in history, hidden not by destruction but by misremembering, is perhaps more haunting than if it had been lost entirely. It suggests that legends don't just fade. They shift, carried by the winds of time, sometimes landing where no one thought to look. Myths are not always lies. They are sometimes memories stretched by time, softened by telling, but rooted in something real. The stories we inherited of sunken cities, golden kings, vanished empires, and sky gardens were not always fantasy. They were echoes, and when we listened closely we found foundations beneath the folklore. The world is still full of stories waiting to be unburied. If this journey through legend and reality intrigued you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep digging deeper into the mysteries of our past. And if you know someone who still thinks myths are just fairy tales, send them this video. They might just change their mind.